There was a recent shooting, mass shooting at Michigan State University. Initially, I thought this might be done by a student. There might be something, some incident involving a student, but it turns out no. The shooter was what? Older guy.
43-year-old black man.
43-year-old black man. And I want to highlight that for a minute because this mass shooting has had a more muted response than other mass shootings. Why? I think it's because the perpetrator is black. Now, usually for the media and for the left, the approach is sort of like this. If there's a mass shooting and a white guy did it, white supremacy is to blame. But if there's a mass shooting and a black guy or a Hispanic guy or an Asian guy did it, then let's not even talk about white supremacy because we really can't. Let's focus on the gun. The gun is to blame. So that's really what happened in the Michigan State. They would have loved to go with white supremacy, but since it was a black guy, it's like, okay, we got to go to like option B, and that is guns. So every time there's a mass shooting, it's about the gun. Mm-hmm. And of course, the demand is for these kinds of guns, not all guns necessarily, but certainly these are dangerous guns. The AR-15 need to be outlawed. Debbie, has been looking into this, and you've got some really good thoughts about it.
Well, I mean, as you know, I have a concealed carry license. I've had it for about 8 years now, and I should practice more than I do. I mean, I never have time to go to the range.
You're pretty good at the range.
I am pretty good, but you do need to practice a lot. You need to use your weapon a lot. So I was looking into like facts versus fiction on the mass shootings, and it got me thinking about the assault weapons ban that was established in 1994 during Clinton. Right, it was a 10-year ban, and it was really for semi-automatic weapons. And so what happened was in the 70s there were a lot of I should qualify that there were mass shootings. And of course, Congress does what Congress does. They're like, oh, we have to stop these mass shootings. Well, really, statistics didn't really go their favor.
Mass shootings are a tiny portion.
So let me read that. So basically, U.S. firearms homicide by the numbers, and I'm reading from a website called usconcealedcarry.com. They have great information. They are nonpartisan. They don't care. They're not pro-gun. They're not against guns. They're just facts. And
they cite all their sources. And
they cite their sources and everything. And it really says that only about 0.1% of firearm homicides are mass shootings. Think about that. We hear more and more. In fact, we talked about the EMP attack. This would dwarf in comparison because...
just to digest, 0.1%. Now, 1% is 1 in 100. 0.1 is 1 in 1,000. So if 1,000 incidents... 1 is a mass shooting. So we're dealing here with the problem that it's kind of an optical illusion because we hear about it, gets a lot of press, but on the other hand, it is not by any means, not even close to the norm.
Yeah, and so the majority of shootings are actually committed by a family member or acquaintance. And in a home, 61%. 25% are committed by a stranger, like as in a robbery. 14% are committed by an intimate partner, as in...
So kind of a relationship gone bad or estranged.
Yeah. Yes. So, again, mass shootings account for a very, very tiny percentage of the shootings. And the other thing...
I didn't know about this, the fact that there was this 10-year ban.
Yeah.
And the question then becomes, if the left is right, then during that 10-year ban, because guns were perhaps more difficult to get, they were certainly illegal, was there a sharp decline in mass shootings, yes or no?
Not a sharp decline. There may have been a slight decline, but not sharp. But interestingly, what there was an increase of were bombings. Between 1994 and 2001, many Americans died under that
a surge of bombing incidents.
Surge of bombing, and so it's interesting because deadly acts of terrorism don't need a gun. So here I'm going to read. This is documented by the Heritage Foundation. In Spain in 2004, a bombing, 192 deaths. Great Britain, 2005, bombing, 52 deaths. Japan, car ramming and stabbing, 7 deaths. China, shovel loader, 11 deaths, 30 injuries. Mass stabbing in China, 31. So it goes on, car ramming, bombing. And then interestingly, in 1994 in the United States, we had someone called the Unabomber. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
Lots of people died under this guy. Started in 1994.
Well, he was sending packages with bombs.
Yeah. And then in Oklahoma City bombing, we all know that one, April 19th of 1995, Timothy McVeigh bombed the, what was the name of the federal building?
The Oklahoma government building.
Yeah.
But I think tell about that, because I think what's fascinating is that McVeigh, what provoked McVeigh by his own understanding to want to do that?
Yeah, so it was a reaction to Ruby Ridge and to
Waco.
To Waco. Yeah, so
in Ruby Ridge and Waco, in both cases,
yes,
the government uses the pretext of going after, quote, illegal guns.
Right.
And they go and they what do they and first of all, in Ruby Ridge, which came first,
right,
they go to this rancher. They claim he's a militia guy.
Exactly.
What did they do? Shoot his wife?
They shot his wife and killed her. Yes.
And child.
And I don't know. Yeah, his son, this 14-year-old son, I believe, also died. So, but again, this is going after people. So during all of this time, of course, having these high-capacity weapons that people have had the right to do, all of a sudden they became the criminal. And so the FBI, the ATF, they use this excuse, right, to go and confiscate their weapons.
I mean, in the case of Waco, you had this guy, David Koresh, I think his name was, and he was kind of a weirdo, maybe a little bit of a cultic type of guy. But on the other hand, and apparently his group had stockpiled weapons, but they didn't use the weapons. There was no indication that they were even plotting anything insidious. And what you have is a massive federal raid on Waco and all kinds of people killed by the U.S. government.
Yeah.
So it looks like McVeigh was like, okay, well, you know what? I'm going to give you a taste of your own medicine. So I think what Debbie's getting at is that you have this supposedly, Garden of Eden that's created by outlawing guns, but it's no Garden of Eden. You've created all these criminals of otherwise law-abiding people who just own a gun.
Yeah.
And you go after them and deploy all this force against them. And also the real bad guys figure out other ways to blow things up.